Welcome to Small Talk, where each week we sit down to discuss the sermon-based small group questions at Wallula Christian Church.
Hello and welcome back to Wallula's weekly podcast, Small Talk. My name is Zach Bolin. I'm student pastor here at Wallula Christian Church, joined by Craig Archer, worship pastor, and Lance Kaufman, lead pastor. We are glad that you're with us today. We are looking at Ephesians chapter 5, verses 1 through 20. Craig's sermon from this past week, titled The Work of Walking. And so we're going to be talking about what does a Christian walk look like, and appropriately enough, we have our intro question that has to do with this as well. And Craig wrote this question. He says, what's the furthest distance you've ever walked? You wrote it, right? I mean, you came up with it.
Sound like you were blaming it on me.
No. Craig, I'm saying Craig came up with the questions today. What is the furthest distance you have ever walked? And was it by choice? Which I haven't... That one kind of threw me because I'm like, why wouldn't it be by choice? But who knows? Was it by choice, or what was the situation, and how did you feel after? So, the furthest distance you've ever walked, Craig. What did you have?
I think I wrote the part by choice because the story at the end of the sermon was not by choice. Yeah. So that was my thinking there. Is that
your answer for today?
No, I actually realized I have a longer one.
Okay.
I mean, that was sort of by choice. You could have just started calling.
Yeah, we could have.
Or
Manhattan taxis.
I hope people listening have heard your sermon, because we're just alluding to a time you've walked, but they don't know.
Yeah.
There are taxis in Manhattan.
Mm-hmm.
Not many, I don't suppose.
Probably not.
Mm-hmm.
Larry Sullivan. Do you know Larry Sullivan? Larry Sullivan was a history teacher at Manhattan Christian College.
Okay.
And Mr. Sullivan was a great guy. He taught my Acts course. He taught church history. But a couple things about Mr. Sullivan. One is that he had a stutter. And he would stutter all the time. You know, he would... I just remember one lecture, he got so excited, he was talking about, and he just said, and he stabbed him, like 17 times, because he was just so excited about the story, and that's kind of when sometimes that kicks in.
It'd be hard to do, if you have a stutter, I'm going to go into teaching.
Yeah. But, he stuttered all the time, except when he prayed. When he'd pray, he'd pray before class or whatever.
Yeah.
He never stuttered.
Whoa.
So it was a crazy kind of thing. I don't know if he always kind of, you pray, you kind of slow down.
Right.
Maybe I don't know what the deal is, but, or the Holy Spirit. I don't know, right? I don't know, but he never stuttered. Yeah. And he drove a cab. That's kind of the...
Really?
Yeah. He just,
like as a side gig, or that was his car, was he an old cab?
I don't think so.
Oh, okay.
He drove a cab as a hustle.
Do you know what I'm talking about? Some people buy... My old roommate had an old cop car, and it had a light.
Same.
It had a light that was mounted on the outside, and it still worked.
Yeah. Right. I had a friend in college too.
Look at that. Yeah.
No, he was a cabbie.
Okay.
Yeah. Huh. So yeah. Anyway,
could
you
have
called
him,
Mr. Sullivan.
Yeah.
See if he would have picked you up. He would have been I don't know, 90, but so not driving a cab. But maybe
you're safe or not.
He would have still came out and got you in his cowboy boots.
But if not that, then when was the longest you've ever walked?
Well, Haley and I did a vacation in Colorado back in 2018, and we were in Boulder, and I think on the west side of Boulder, there's a little mountain range called the Flatirons, and when you look up at them, it's just like these long, flat pieces of rock. Right. And there's down at the base of that, there's a lot of trails that go around, and it's flat at first before the trail starts going up the mountain. And we were going to go on a casual walk through the park area, and then we got on one of the trails that started going up. And then people coming back down were like, hey, it's worth it. Keep going. And so we were zero planned to go up to the top. And I think I had maybe just a little water bottle with me. And the altitude increase gets pretty drastic. And I we just didn't prepare for it. So at one point I was like, I think we should turn around.
Right.
And I was just like feeling like weak going up these rock stairs. But we kept going, and once we got to the top, the view was awesome, like they said. Then you have to go back down.
Yeah.
And going back down is sometimes harder because you're
Right,
catching
yes.
your weight as you're going down.
Your quads are like doing all the work now.
And so the whole thing round trip was 4 miles of unplanned hiking.
Yeah.
And I remember going to eat dinner like once we got back, and that was like one of the most like hungry I've felt, just like my body needs nourishment after all of that. So that was one of the other times I guess it kind of was unplanned too.
Yeah.
I was not thinking I would go up to the top of that, and but
and I'm not trying to disparage you at all. Surely you've done more than 4 miles. I mean, that's a hard one, but like
Yes.
as far as the furthest distance, you've probably easily done 4 somewhere else.
right.
Like,
Well, like
in marching and stuff?
Yeah, well, like I mentioned, like doing like 3 or 4 mile parades in the K-State band.
Yeah.
We would do that. I hated those. It's like, when is this going to end? Especially in like the bull trips when I was in Arizona and Texas, and like we would do the homecoming parade in Manhattan, and I knew like, okay, we're going from campus all the way down to points, and I know where we're ending. But when you're somewhere else, I don't know the landmarks and how far we're going to go.
Right.
So it just felt like it was going on forever and ever.
Yeah.
Carrying that drum around. So, yeah.
Yep. I was thinking about a couple of different ways to answer, because the furthest distance I've ever walked, I don't really have like one solid answer, like it's got to be this. I do know one time at a CIY conference, the campus was so spread out that you get up and then breakfast is way across campus, but then the main session is somewhere else. You do that a couple of times a day, going to each of those. And it was over 11 miles of walking. Like my watch had told me I'd taken that many steps throughout the day. So that wasn't a one-time deal, but it felt like it. It was a long day. And they had like a night activity, like a late night game thing.
Sure.
So it's like 11:30 by the time you're done. I did a 12-mile hike once in college. We had planned, but we also didn't know, we're like, we have our backpacks and all this stuff, but I had no experience. So it was, we're just young and be like, that sounds cool. Probably the one, I don't know how long it was, but the one that it felt the most, and this kind of goes along with your story too. A friend of mine, or Josh and Matt, these two of my good friends from college, we decided we were going to go on this hike. This is after I graduated college. I was just started working here. And so we went to Colorado, and there's a guy who led hikes for a living who's like, this is where you got to go. So he just told us.
Yeah.
He's like, it's a 14,000 peak.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, Mount Democrat, I think it was called. And then you can walk the peaks. And so we're like, yeah, let's do it. So we think we're prepared. And we go, and it was hard. It wasn't like crazy steep. There were some parts that were, but it was basically like just trails uphill. But it took us like 8 a.m. till 4 p.m. to get all the way up and then all the way down. It started hailing on us at one point. One of the guys threw up. The other one had to go to the bathroom, and there was no place to go. And it was just like all the bad. I remember when we ended, we had to drive like an hour or two back because we were outside of Denver.
Right, yeah.
And so it was just the most exhausted that we had been. We go into town and we're like, we found this one random, I forgot about this. This wasn't part of the story, but I just remember we were so beat, and we found this one place that was like, they do massages, right? You go to get a masseuse, and we had never had massage. We're like, we need it. So we go in and we're like, how much is it? And they're like, well, for 1 hour, it's, whatever, $60, $100, something. And we're like, okay. So we went back and we talked to each other. We're like, okay, how about this? We'll pay for the hour, but can you give us 20 minutes each? Like just 20 minutes for me, 20 minutes for him. And then she's like, no, it's for one person. And we're like, hey, it's the same price. Like, what's the big deal? Just give us, we just were like something.
Yeah.
We were just in pain and not wanting to move. And so, yeah, that probably was one that, I don't know if it was the longest, but it felt like the most, painful, tiring walk that we'd ever been through. It was too much for us, and we didn't realize it until we were already up. But anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know people that have done 14ers, and it's way
This
harder
guy.
than I didn't know you did one.
Yeah.
And they're always like, yeah, it's way harder than I thought it'd be.
Yeah. Yeah. We would, because you could walk along. I remember this too. You got up to the top and you're like, okay, we're here. And then it's like, it kind of goes down just a little bit and then up again to another peak. And so we hit like 3 peaks. And we were just so out of breath, like we couldn't catch our breath. So we would go, and then we'd sit down and take a break for like 10 or 15 minutes, and then keep going. My voice cracked there. And then eventually we got to the point where we just would lay down. Like we're just like, I can't.
Yeah.
Our breaks were just us sprawling out on the ground and being like, are we still doing this? And it's like, okay, hang on. And then trying to get up again. Yeah, it was not fun. But we did it. We got pictures of it. So, yeah. Maybe I'll give you some to post. Here. If it's on Facebook. I'll see if I can find one.
The farthest I've ever walked, in our pre-production meeting this morning, I said,
we were going over all this.
Yeah. Well, I said, how far is the refrigerator from here? And that's how far. Shout out Katie. So she really enjoyed that. I don't know. I've told a story in a message before about a hike a couple summers ago. I don't know as if it was a especially long hike. It was long for me.
I think that's part of the question.
And
what felt the longest?
Yeah.
So, well, that's what I was saying. You've been to Disney, so that's got to be
walking around. Yeah,
that's all day walking.
But I told that story in the sermon, and I just laid down on a log towards the end of it, and I thought maybe I'll die here. Maybe this will be it, and I'll just stop and be one with the log in a few years.
Yeah.
So that wasn't great, and on another vacation. On another vacation, we were in Chicago, and we decided we rode the train to Chicago, downtown Chicago, and then we just took mass transit everywhere. So we didn't have a car or whatever. And we said we're going to go to this one place, and I don't even remember what it was now. That's how
memorable it was.
Yeah.
How much it meant to you.
Yes. But it was further than we thought, sort of thing. And then it started raining on the way back, and so I don't want to make that sound like it was all that far either. Maybe, I don't know. It was farther than we thought. And then it started raining. It was kind of miserable on the way back.
Was your whole family?
Sherry and Zoe and I were on that trip. And so that seemed like a long ways. Once when I was in middle school, my youth pastor, this isn't really walking, it was jogging, I guess, but my youth pastor said, "Hey Lance, you wanna go jogging tonight?" I was like,
I can't even. I'm trying to figure out the context of why that would.
He's just trying to hang out with me. Maybe he thought this chubby 8th grader needs to go jogging. I don't know. And so I was like, not really.
Yeah.
He said, "No, come on along." And I was like, "Okay." And so I show up, and he's there with this one of our elders in the church. And this guy, who was a retired Marine, had been retired from the Marines a long time, but and so he's jogging with us. And what I remember about Skip on this jogging trip, that was his name, the elder's name. He would speed up. He's like, "This is how you do it." And I'm like, okay. And he would speed up going up the hill. You gotta go run faster up the hill. We speed up the hill, slow down the hill. I'm like, okay, that seems reverse
right
to me, but all right. And so that's what I remember about that. That wasn't very far either, I'm sure, but at least one hill I had to run up.
Why was Skip there? If your youth pastor's like, Lance and I can hang out, and he's like, I got to bring an elder.
I don't know.
It sounds like
that's all the
church
information
confrontation
I had.
here.
No, it was just
talk
like
to him.
Skip's going jogging too, I guess.
Okay.
So that's
It is funny. I think about that within youth ministry, because my youth pastor really loved basketball. So when we got this gym here, he would open it up, and it was a great outreach. And I don't play basketball. Good luck. I'll unlock it for you. You can go.
Well, maybe you ought to invite some elders and
to go running.
Yeah,
go on a jog.
That means I got to jog.
Yeah.
I don't want to jog.
Yeah. Of the elders, who would you invite?
No.
I was gonna say George Hodge is gone.
Well, it's got to be
so-
Thomas. Thomas for sure.
Thomas for sure.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want me to rank them? Thomas, Howard,
For sure. That's how that would go.
Sammy.
Bill just had knee surgery.
Bill just had knee
So
surgery.
he
Yeah.
should probably wait on the jogging.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Anyway, well, there you go. That's the furthest we've
Sure.
walked.
That's good times.
None of us really had like a solid, like, there's this one. If we had like a military person here, they'd probably talk about like a march that they had to go
Right,
on. Or,
yeah.
you know, a ruck.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
do they call them?
I,
Ruck, yeah.
I mean, those were all great answers.
Oh, okay. I'm just thinking like one that's like really like, oh, I know for sure this is the longest
Oh.
one. This is the one that was burned in my mind.
Yeah.
We're like, yeah, I've walked some here and there.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah. Well, anyway, we're moving on.
I just walked up these stairs.
I know,
And
every
that
time.
was, yeah, it was rough.
We've been doing a lot more walking recently, walking to the other side to the bathroom
That's
since
right.
our bathrooms don't work.
Yep.
People don't know what we're dealing with over here.
It's rough.
So
Yeah.
I had to go. Our water fountains don't work. I had to walk all the way to the other side to fill up my water bottle as well.
Paul wrote Ephesians while in prison.
Hey, listen,
And
I can do all things.
We are doing this podcast while walking across the
That's
hallway
right, to get my water.
to a restroom.
Yep.
It was rough. Tough.
But I grabbed some mints when I'm going over there, so I
Worth
mean,
it.
Quit
dude,
stealing those mints.
I mean,
gravy.
I'm not kidding when I say 100% of the times that I go over there, I grab.
Really?
Oh, I grab a couple, yeah, just to tide me over time.
Just to tide you over.
Yeah, and I'm enduring with that too because they're peppermint mints and not wintergreens, and so they're not even the ones I like. But I still grab some.
All right.
Yeah. So anyway, shout out to Lori. Thanks for stocking those. Let's move on.
Okay.
All right. We are looking at questions 4 and 6 today from the small group questions. Question number 4 says, part of walking in light is exposing darkness. So what does it look like in your life, both in your own heart and in the world around you? So when we're walking in light, we're calling out the things that are evil or darkness or whatever in the world.
Right.
So what does that look like for you, Craig?
Well, the first word that I wrote down under that question was just honesty. And I think a huge piece of that is it's like, we can read scripture, know God's word, and look at our own life and then see how things are maybe not aligning with his guidance and commands and maybe not being obedient to some of that. And then, we could ignore and just kind of move on or shrug our shoulders at some things. And I think a big piece of that, of kind of stepping into that and exposing something, is the honesty piece of it. And, you have to kind of question things and analyze it and really be honest and like, okay, is this good or not? And what do I need to do with this?
Right.
And it reminded me, I thought of Ephesians 4:15, speaking the truth in love, like holding on to truth. And there's a way to do that in a loving way. Like we see that in Jesus's ministry. And that ties into like the honesty thing, like holding on to what is true and what you know to be good and right and the way that God has designed us to live. And so, yeah, just leaning into the truth and the honesty and what you need to do with it. And then I also thought about in like living in community, what that looks like. Because I also think you can get to a place like in close relationships, people that know you really well, being willing to be vulnerable with people and like being willing to like let people speak into your life, because we have blind spots in our life that we may not be seeing, and for someone to bring that up and expose that, you need to kind of be ready and willing to be, okay, I receive that, let's do something with it. And then the last thing I thought about was there's a song that I've been listening to recently where in the lyrics he's talking about his relationship with God and kind of pointing to some of the Psalms, saying God fully knows me. and pointing back to like he's the one that knit me together in my mother's womb, designed me, created me, and at this point, like he always knows me, everything about me, and at the same time, like when he knows everything about me, it's like the good and the bad and all of everything in between, and at the same time, because of Jesus, like he sees me through the gospel and full of love and compassion, and so it's like you don't need to, when you expose something and want to work on it, you don't need to like sit in it and dwell in it, but like you have to step forward with it. So I thought about that piece as well, because like that's how God meets us in those times. It's like it's not trying to like, you know, shame on you and just like want us to like sit and dwell in it or anything like that, but like moving forward with it and following after God, just taking those steps to work on it. I think that's a piece of it too, where it's like, okay, you're exposing it. What do we need to do with it? And kind of, the steps necessary. So those were some of the things I was thinking about.
Well, I like the question. It's one I realized I hadn't really thought about it until like I saw it when you wrote it down. But because I think growing up, it's like I'm a good Christian when I do the right things, when I love people and serve and help. And there's a comfort almost to a fault of like, I'm just going to sit on that camp, sit on the side where I'm just helping people, because everyone likes to be helped.
Yeah.
Everyone likes to do that. And it's easy to kind of lean into that. But also, you know, Jesus came and he was full of grace and truth. And so there's the grace and the love and all that, but there's also the truth where it's like, I'm going to call out the things that are sinful, both within the church for sure, but has no problem standing up for, you know, and saying, you know, if something is wrong. And so I also need to be there too. So I think some people are very comfortable calling out what is wrong and sinful in the world, but maybe struggle more with the showing kindness and compassion. And then other people are like me. I think I gravitate more to that's easier versus this. So I've tried to lean into this of being more solid on, in a loving way, like you said, calling out or exposing that. One of the things that helped me do that is to recognize, maybe because I'm used to seeing it online or whatever, but it's so easy to call out the sin in this world or whatever, the evil that we see, and we just make it about a bunch of people. Yeah, like these people are all bad because, right? And it's like we're attacking them, but instead recognizing what you know, like calling out the sin and not the sinner, of just saying, like even personally, like, hey, Craig, what you said hurt me, right? Instead of saying Craig's a jerk. Craig is, whatever. Craig is this bad person. It's like what you did. And so just focusing on the action itself. Hey, what you're doing. So I think about it even with my own kids. I remember, when they were younger, Graham, I would say, hey, did you brush your teeth? And he's like, yep. And then I'd already checked the toothbrush and like bone dry. And I would just be like, Graham, you lied. Like I've checked it. It's not even kind of. It's not even kind of what you lied. And he goes, oh, okay. I said, wait, let's not skip past this, because this was the thing you did was wrong. Like, why did you do that? And he goes, well, because he's young and doesn't want to brush his teeth. But I'm quick to not bring that up and being like, you're a liar. You are this person, to not make the sin his identity, but just say this thing is wrong, and we don't do that. Yeah. And so trying to make those things separate. So when the students in the youth room ask a question or they may do something, I'm quicker to call it out and say, well, that's why this is not okay. But not to say like you're not okay, or your friend, whoever's doing this isn't. So it helped me to realize I'm focusing on the actual act of. And then the other thing is recognizing like it's kind of a cheat code. Like I still get to help them. So I look at it like, why is it easier for me now? Because maybe you don't realize that this thing you're doing is hurtful to me or to you or to whatever else. And so I still look at it like, oh, maybe they don't know. Like you said, it works well in community. Yeah. When other people know you can. Right. So instead of worrying about, well, are they going to be upset with me? It's like, maybe no one else is saying this, but when this thing happens or whatever it is, to be able to call out what is not good, to maybe help them. And if they take it negatively, then it's like, hey, I'm trying here. Like this really is good for you. even if you don't see it that way. The last thing I was thinking of is like, what does it look like? You said, I just now realized, what does it look like in your own heart? Like, how do I expose it in my own life? But I was thinking, like, in my own heart, how do I get to that place where I'm calling it out? So I didn't even think about the self-reflection of it. But the last practical thing I thought of is, like, when do you do it? Because when we live in a world where we're constantly bombarded with all the evil and bad stuff everywhere in the world, wars that are going on and crooked politicians in every country and whatever else, you'll never stop calling out the evil because it's just everywhere. Right. So I had a professor talk about this, and this isn't biblical. It was just his practical way of like, when do you say something, when do you not? And he said the bigger the audience, or the bigger the issue, the smaller the audience. So if there's this massive big thing that everyone's arguing over, he's not going to be like, here's what I think on Facebook or whatever. He'll call it out from the pulpit. He'll do it in a small group or one-on-one, but he's not going to make this giant public statement if it's big and controversial or whatever. He's like, I need to talk with someone. I need to see their face. I need them to see mine, and here we can have a dialogue about it. And so doing that stuff not from a huge platform and then just walking away and being like, deal with that, everyone. So not to say that's the only way to do it. I mean, there's a lot of Christians online who are very active online and will put out their thoughts on stuff, but it's hard to navigate that when you have thousands of people chiming in, or potentially. Right. So trying to, if I am going to talk to someone, do it face to face, and let them know my heart behind it. So yeah.
Well, I think the that's all good stuff. I think the beginning of the answer to the question is in the question itself. It talks about, how do I shine light into the darkness and in the world and in our own hearts, right? And I think it should start with yourself. Jesus talked about that when he said, be careful moving that speck out of your neighbor's eye when you've got this log in your eye. And that's the idea there, right? Start with some introspection. Start with, James talks about confessing your sin to one another. And so you have to be real with yourself. And I think it begins with admitting that, hey, everybody is in the same boat, that we're all sinners. We all fall short of the glory of God, and in figuring that out, and just getting real with yourself, and being real. Craig, you talked about honesty, being honest with Jesus and with others about the sin in your life, and in all of our lives, not just Craig's life, all of our lives, and that sort of thing. So just starting with your own heart is important. We had this lunch here at Wallula with a couple of Kansas legislators, and it was a good lunch and a good meeting. And then at the end, they said, "Okay, we're gonna go around and you introduce yourself, the pastors there, the preachers, and tell a little bit about your church or whatever." Okay, I can do that. That's good. And then they said, "Okay, and then ask a question of the legislators." And it can't be about policy or anything, like that, but ask a question. And that's where I'm like, oh, the anxiety starts building. Some people are good. Like, Zach, you're a good question asker.
Okay.
You ask good questions, good question asker. I'm like, I'm not.
Okay.
I'm not, and so I'm thinking, and finally I thought, oh, well, this is reasonable. And so I asked, okay, you've talked about all the things you're doing and working hard, but how can churches support you? What are some tangible ways we can support you and your efforts, and just kind of personally, not carrying signs or voting or whatever, but how can we support you? And one of them said, well, we need the church to speak out about kind of these when there's evil in the world, to speak out about those items. Just be the church, which makes real sense. But it just was sort of interesting coming from somebody somebody else, right? That,
Yeah.
hey, this is important. And so, in my life, okay, as a preacher, I'm going to do that occasionally, right? This is what we see. And I just thought, okay, and I think this is true for everybody, not just preachers, but I think there's probably a few things keys that we need to keep in mind for me. And one is, the first key is to lean heavily on God's word. And what I mean by that is, I think sometimes we, whatever the hot button issue is, transgenderism or homosexuality or abortion or whatever it is, right? You run down the list, this blows up and it becomes a big issue. People are talking about it, and as believers, sometimes I think we say, "Oh, that's bad, that's wrong," because everybody else around us is saying that's bad and that's wrong, and it might be, it might be, and it might be dishonoring to God, and it might be something that we need to call out. But we need the source, the authority. Where's that authority come from? Well, it doesn't come from the noise around us.
Right.
It doesn't come from, even no matter how respected kind of the source is that we're receiving that from. If it's a person, that's not good enough. And so we need to look and really study and understand, okay, this is why from God's word that, he wouldn't like this, and sometimes that's really easy because he says, don't do that. Right. And so that's really easy, but sometimes, like, abortion is one of those issues. Like, you look through the book, you're not going to find the word abortion in it.
Right.
And so there's not just this one line that says, stop doing that. And so you kind of have to do a little study and figure out, okay, well, these are the principles, and this is the truth, and so lean heavily on God's word. So you guys have talked about this already. I wrote down, be your brother's keeper, right? And so this is most important when in fact, Paul's writing this. This section of scripture in Ephesians chapter 5, he's writing this to believers, to the church in Ephesus. He's saying, don't let this stuff get into the church, right? There shouldn't be a hint of this. Don't partner with anybody who's involved with this. There shouldn't be a hint of these things in the church. And so when we talk about, calling out sin or whatever, we like to call out sin. Zach, you said, all these people out there, right?
Yeah.
We like to point at the world and say, you are bad, but we're not very good sometimes in doing what we really ought to be doing according to the word, and calling out sin in the church and saying, hey, we got to get this right. Yeah. We can't live like that either. That's not any good. And so we ought to be our brother's keeper. And finally, I just always, I don't really know if this is true. I've told this story before. It sounds like it should be true, right? But the Secret Service, they're responsible for counterfeit money, finding, making sure all the money is legit. And I read somewhere where somebody asked, how do you do that? How do you know all the different fakes? How do you keep track of that? And they said, well, you study the real currency. You know the real currency well. And I just think we need to overcome evil with good, right? And Paul talks about that in Romans, and we want to make sure that we are shining the light, not just exposing darkness, but we're the city on the hill. We are providing this example, and we're kind of demonstrating what a real walk with Jesus looks like. So those are kind of my three keys.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Almost want to be like, what's been the hardest thing someone's called you out for?
Bonus episode.
Yeah. What darkness has been exposed? All right. Number 6 is, I don't know what we think of that. Number 6, it says, Paul calls us to, quote, make the best use of the time that we have. So what are some ways that you might be wasting time or missing opportunities to walk wisely? It says, be very careful then how you live, not as unwise, but as wise, making the most of every opportunity because the days are evil. And so to make the most of the time that we do have, to make the most of every opportunity. So on the flip side, what are some ways that we might not be doing it and maybe missing the opportunities?
When I wrote this question, I had this image in mind. It's funny saying this because I saw it on social media, but it's a picture that like a graphic design sort of thing that someone made, and it's someone looking at their phone, and coming out the top of it is kind of like a Polaroid scroll, and so like what they're looking at is depicted as like coming out of their phone as like being developed pictures everywhere, and the whole room around them is just littered with pictures that they've looked at on their phone, continuously scrolling. And that's what I was kind of thinking about when Paul says like make the best use of your time. Like Lance said, there's in the passages that we've been in, there's these kind of pointed instructions like do this, don't do this.
Right.
And then all of a sudden you get to just make the best use of your time.
Right.
It kind of opens up and you're like, all right, so I got to use some discernment in figuring out how I personally will apply this. And, it's easy to think of examples like looking at your phone. And that's not the best use of time if you're just sitting there constantly looking at it. And one thing that I thought of recently, I listened to a podcast of, it was Lecrae's podcast, which I don't normally listen to. But Francis Chan was a guest on it, and I listened to it, and he's talking about kind of recent ministry things in this book that he was getting ready to write, and Francis Chan went back in some of his like upbringing, which I didn't really know about, so I learned some of that details of his life, and he's kind of known for like his rope illustration is very popular, and just if you watch him preach, just like his like urgency and kind of passion is like he's just like right out the gate. And he was talking about that because his upbringing, like both of his parents died when he was pretty young, and then like he was being taken care of by one of his grandparents, and I think she died pretty young. So then at a young age, he's like looking around and he started thinking like, I'm next. Yeah. And so that kind of, when he became a preacher, like that's what he was thinking in the back of his mind. He's like, every time I got up to preach, he almost kind of talked about it like maybe it wasn't the healthiest way to think about it, but he was like, this is maybe my last chance to ever like say some of these things to people. And so it's kind of contrasting like those two images of like someone endlessly scrolling on their phone, or it's like this might be the last time. And so I'm just thinking about, okay, as a Christian, a follower of Jesus, we need to be really mindful about how we use our time and not to just kind of mindlessly let things go by. And I think about relationships, like the friendships we have, the relationship with my kids, my marriage, and what it looks like to think about those things wisely. And like day by day, what does that look like to make the most of it and really look at time as it's a gift we're given. It's easy to wake up and just kind of, it's like, oh, another day, here we are. But really to think of like, okay, I wasn't guaranteed this, so what am I going to do with it?
Sure.
And, it's kind of interesting, kind of stuck in the middle of all of these like pointed directions. It's like, all right, apply these to my day. But then it gets into the details of the personal life and what you have around you and what you're going to do with it. And, he talks about right after that, like participating in the life of the church and like, taking a step towards like, what am I going to do with that opportunity instead of just going through the motions of like, I go Sunday morning and then I go home, like to actually step into participating in church somehow. Like it enhances the community and the like closeness of being part of the church, like you get a better experience out of it instead of just Sunday morning and leaving. And so I just, at the end of it, I just asked myself, how will I allow God to shape my day? And I thought back even like in college, I had a friend that one of his mentors sat down with him because he felt like he was struggling with this, kind of wasting time. And they mapped out like 15-minute increments of every single day. And so it was like a really detailed way to look at it and be like, what am I going to do here? And so maybe even like that's the step, is like thinking about like the transitions of the day and how you can use them. But it's like, man, every opportunity, there's like something there to lean into, you know?
Yeah, I'm trying to balance, because there's a story, and I told you this earlier, there's a story that you told in your sermon that I really liked. And it's like this way to look at life where you're talking about Avid, and you're like, I just want him to enjoy what I've given him, but I also have these rules that protect him, right? Like, don't stick the silverware into garbage disposal or anything else. And it's like, oh, that's a really good way to think about life, where God has given this to us to enjoy, but there's also parameters that we're supposed to live in. So I have that mindset of like, I'm living life. I'm living life for God, and just don't do these bad things. And then on the other hand, it's like, but also while you're living life, make the most of every opportunity, And it's like, it's kind of a weird dynamic of like, I thought I'm supposed to just enjoy the creation. And it's like, but there's also this urgency of 15-minute increments. What are you doing with these conversations, And it's, and trying to reconcile both of like not beating myself up if I'm on the phone, but also not having the phone be too much. And so one thing I thought was interesting is, says, don't you think a little bit, I'm sorry, but don't you think a little bit is that we've lost perspective on, I'm thinking about this from, we talk about just enjoying the creation, and it's like, okay, well, what do you mean by that? Right, and in our world, in the United States, so many people are talking. I'm just getting to retirement, and I read the other day, retirement age ought to be 50, because why do we just have to work until we're what are you gonna do after
too
that?
old to enjoy it? Right, that's what this person was saying. So the retirement age ought to be 50, and I just thought, why do we think, man, if I could just stop working, that's what it's
then
all about.
Happy,
then I'll be happy.
Just do whatever I want.
Then you made it.
Right, yeah. And work, first of all, it ought to be part of our worship, right? Whatever we're doing, we ought to do in the name of the Lord. But I just think we have this kind of warped image of how do we enjoy the creation God has given us? God put Adam in the garden, and he didn't say, kick back and relax.
No.
Right? He said, be fruitful and multiply. You're in charge of all of it.
Go name those animals.
Yes.
He gave him a job.
Work the garden,
right.
grow some plants, provide.
He had a job to do. He had work to do. And now sin has made that different.
Right.
Right? Sin has made that a burden at times. But as redeemed followers of Jesus, that should be less so,
right?
At least, right? And so, anyway, I'm sorry, but
no, that's a good point. Yeah, when we think of enjoying creation, it's like, I'm just going to lay out and do nothing.
Yeah,
just soak up the sun.
And if He's given us this mission outside of our job, whatever our career is, whatever we do to earn a living and provide for our families. And He's given us a bigger mission than that. And that bigger mission is to, grow His kingdom, is to make disciples. Man, if that, why do we think about that in terms of, man, I have to do this.
Like another job.
I got to use these 15-minute increments to make disciples.
Right.
That ought not be our attitude about it. I mean, this ought to bring us great joy. Anyway, I'm sorry.
No.
Go ahead.
No, it's good.
Yeah.
Well, I was reconciling both those things, right? Like we sometimes lead with enjoy what God has given us, and then also the urgency of in the middle of the enjoyment.
Yes.
And one of the things, and I don't know why it is, but like when he says, be very careful then how you live, not as unwise but as wise, making the most of every opportunity. Therefore, don't be foolish, but understand what the Lord's will is. Don't get drunk on wine, which leads to debauchery. And that's the only example he gives. Don't get drunk on wine. So don't be foolish. And he's like, so don't get drunk on wine, which leads to debauchery. Instead, speak with psalms and hymns.
Right.
But I feel like he could have made a list.
Yeah.
So don't be foolish. Don't get drunk on wine. Don't do this or this or this. But I was trying to maybe, I don't know if read into it is too much, but just thinking about, okay, so we have one example of just what is something that people enjoy God's creation for, drinking, right? And so it's in the Bible, we have it today. And is that something that people have abused, right? Like, don't be foolish by abusing this thing. And so just by taking that one example, I think of like, okay, I'm going to enjoy God's creation, but at the same time, don't be foolish, don't abuse it. And so self-on is the easiest answer to go with. But in anything that we do, there's a sense of like, we can enjoy it until like in and of itself, that's not the sin, but going too far with it can be. And then you're just a fool. Like you're thinking this is what's providing you with what you like. And so it's not, so you end up just wasting time. It's like, man.
So that word debauchery, I was almost going to joke about it on Sunday because like, has anyone said that word ever? Right. But I wrote down the definition of it because it is one of those words where you're like, all right. But something that leads to reckless or wild living that brings nothing of value. And so, that's what he's getting at.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So it says, what are some ways you might be wasting time? So it's easy to look at the things like, well, this is sinful, so I'm not going to do it. But then it's like, well, what are the things that are not sinful that are still, kind of like this, like it's too much, and then it becomes a problem. Yeah. So you had asked the question two ways: wasting time or missing opportunities, and I like the distinction there. I kind of got, I don't know if convicted is the right word, but felt like because I have more time, I'm living on my own, and I have Graham say like half the time, so it's like, man, I have half the time where I'm just, what am I doing with this time? Like I'm not doing sinful things, but at the same time, I'm kind of wasting the time. So I was like, what could I be doing? So the past like year and a half, I thought, man, there's a lot of students here who have games outside of, games, activities, drama, all this stuff. So I made it a point to like want to just show up. Like I'm not, I know it seems kind of like a cool thing, like I get to go to these kids' stuff. I'm not doing much. I'm just sitting and watching, but it's a really big deal to them, and I like being able to see them outside of youth group. So, but it came from this like, just doing nothing, and not sinning is still doesn't feel like that's fulfilling. Like, well, I technically haven't done anything wrong as I'm just home doing nothing. So I was thinking like, what else could I be doing? The missing opportunities though, that's the one that I was like, okay, for me, what are some ways that I might be missing opportunities? And I think, we even talked about it today in staff meeting, like sometimes you have a conversation with someone and with 20/20 vision, you look back and be like, I could have worded that better. And so it's still things like that where in the moment, I look back and think some of the stuff I think of is like inviting people to church, and I have done that, but at other times I'm like, oh, I should have, I should have done, like with my neighbors, I've reached out to them, but there's so many times just in passing where I'm thinking, oh, you don't have a church? It's like, you should come to Wallula, right? And so little things like that. Another big one is just encouraging. Like, I don't know a single person who doesn't like getting encouragement. And I'm still just like, hey, I really appreciate what you did. Thanks for saying that. That meant a lot to me. And it feels still weird. And like, I have to hold on to be like, I don't want to be so vulnerable, but it's such an easy win to like an opportunity to encourage someone. If a kid shows up and I haven't seen them in, a month, 2 months, and it's like, whoa, look who's here. Okay, that probably was a missed opportunity, as opposed to be like, man, I'm so glad to see you again, instead of highlighting the where have you been. switching that around and encouraging them, like, so good to see you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then just asking people how they're really doing, like having these opportunities to, in these small connection points. So that's what I kind of like, making the most of my time, the best use of my time, is the opportunities where I'm just talking to people. And like you said, I'm good at asking questions. I can keep a conversation going and still just keep it level and not like, how are you really doing? And so, trying to make better opportunities from that. But
this is an interesting question in that, that phrase in verse 16, making the best use of the time. I didn't do a deep dive into the language here, which I'm not very good at anyway, but I didn't do it at all. I read, though, someone said, well, that phrase, the best use of time, literally means redeeming the time. Now, I don't really know if that's true or not. I don't have a lot of reason to doubt this scholar or whatever, but I love that idea, that it's redeeming the time, because, man, there's one resource that just we can't hold on to, and it's time. Just no matter what we do, time is going to keep moving. Right? Time is going to keep moving, and I think that's part of what Paul is driving at here, is that don't let it slip away. Redeem that, buy that back, use it for good, because the days are evil, right? And if we just, it's that old saying, what does evil need to prosper? Is for a good man to do nothing, right? However that goes, I butchered it, but that's the idea. That's sort of the idea here, is that if we just sit back and relax, then he who is in the world is going to have his way a little bit, and so we need to buy that time back, and he gets right into it. How do you do that? Well, you have a relationship with the Spirit. You're involved in the life of the church. You spend time giving thanks, encouraging and being positive like that. Then he dives right into, hey, we're going to live in our families for Jesus. We're going to live in our workplaces for Jesus. And it's amazing to me. We start with kind of these highbrow principles, this spiritual warfare kind of stuff. And what's that look like? How do we make the best use of our time? And then he gets directly following this. It's like, we're going to talk about your relationship between husbands and wife, between kids and parents, between slaves and masters, and these everyday relationships, kind of the nitty-gritty of life. And we're going to live these principles in that's the first place we start, is in these kind of small relationships or big relationships in a small way, and in everyday life. And so I love that idea that we're going to make the best use of our time in these relationships. I recently read Colossians chapter 1, and Colossians chapter 1 is basically it's the beginning of another letter, and Paul begins all these letters with prayers. And so most of chapter 1 is a prayer where he says, don't ever stop praying, right? I'm going to pray for you all the time. And I just think we need to be more real about that, and that how do we make better use of our time? Man, if we could figure out a way to spend some time in prayer, what a difference it would make in our lives. You think about, and you guys have talked about it, death scrolling on your phone, or watching the ball game, right, or whatever is on television, and just kind of zoning out there. Man. Could we be making better use of that time? Sure. You guys remember the movie Schindler's List, right? And there's at the end of the movie, he's like, he's thinking about, somebody asks him, what more could you have done or something, and he's like making a list of, well, look at this car, I could have sold this car, and this car
like
is
his jewelry, and he's holding it up, and could have bought someone else.
Right, this car is 10 lives, or that watch is 2 lives, or whatever it is, and he kind of makes this list of, I could have done so much more, right? And I you're right, Zach, that we ought not beat ourselves up. I mean, we could really,
Yeah.
Because look, there's time to rest. We all need that to refuel, and so we could really beat ourselves up with that idea. You're right, but man, if we could spend a little more time praying, right? And in that prayer, he says, "Never lose hope." Right? I just think that's so. Don't forget the big picture. Don't forget that there's a reality of heaven and face to face with Jesus. That's what this is all about, and I just think that's got to be part of it when we lose track of how we ought to spend our time and what we ought to be doing. Is we just lose sight of the big picture. We just. I don't know if we lose hope, but we set it aside, for the moment or whatever. And then he talks about I just pray that the gospel would spread in that prayer. And again, that we're on this big mission in Colossians. I'm in Colossians 1, and this big, we're on this big mission together, and we just we need to think about how we can share the story of Jesus more with those around us. So that's what I think about when I want to redeem the time. Those are the things I want to be about.
Yeah. Well, really good, Craig. Great sermon. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
If you haven't heard it, you can go online. You can go online and watch all of our sermons. You can search for our sermons based off the speaker, when it was, all that stuff. So
Passage, I think, now on the website.
maybe
Really?
I think. Yeah.
Sure.
I should talk to the person who knows all that. Craig?
Absolutely.
Well, thank you guys for joining us. We will continue on with Ephesians next week, so we look forward to seeing you then.
All right.